What's up, guys? Coach Lucas here. I'm with Coach Leo. We're starting this YouTube podcast idea to share information. The goal here is to share the knowledge and experiences that we've accumulated over the years and share with you so that hopefully you can help you and your player and your family in their goals of playing at the college and professional levels. So let's go ahead and dive in. Coach Leo, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. So we posted recently in our parent community some things that parents would like addressed or talked about that would add value. And so the first question here, the first topic rather, is off-season speed and conditioning programs. And I thought it'd be great to start there, Leo, because this is certainly your wheelhouse. So let's talk off-season speed and conditioning. What are your thoughts?
Well, the current landscape and what the reality are kind of two different things. So currently the landscape for speed and conditioning is cells, right? So it's not necessarily what actually works. So when you're talking about speed and conditioning, we're usually talking about players being able to be more explosive, jump higher, be faster, whatever that may be. And you have to understand how that actually works before we can dive into what the current landscape is doing and why it's wrong. So if we actually are talking about how to actually make the human body faster, so your muscle can produce X amount of force, right? So my muscle can produce so much force, and then however fast it can produce that force, called a rate of force production, is how fast I can move, especially when it's a sequence of muscles acting together, right? So like my hamstring, my glute fire, my lower back fires when I sprint, right? So however much force they can produce and the rate at which they can produce that is how fast somebody can move, how explosive they can become. So when we just focus on that rate of force production, which is speed training, right? When you're doing explosive movements, plyometrics, squatting with chains on the ends, there's a lot of different types of speed training that work. Even sprinting is a form of speed training. All we're doing is teaching that muscle how to produce that force more quickly. The fact of the matter is, when you play a season, you're doing that all the time as it is. You're sprinting, you're jumping, you're exploding. So your body's actually learned how to produce force quicker already. So using that and doing it again in the off season, you're literally going to end up with the same result you already had just from what you were doing playing to get any faster, if that makes sense. So how do then comes the reality? How do we actually make someone faster? Well, if my rate of how much force I can produce is here, and I can produce it really quickly, okay, well, what's the next step? I need to be able to produce more force and then teach that muscle how to produce that force quickly. So I improve that rate of force production. So off-season training mainly should be to get stronger until you're able to produce enough force that now you want that to become a fast rate of force production. And then it's time to actually do speed training. So the current landscape, we're jumping right into speed and we're doing conditioning way too far out from the regular season. So we're burning through our energy reserves. We're fatigued body, which masks fitness. So now I'm fatigued and I'm doing explosive work, right? So conditioning to me really doesn't need to be done that far out from actual season, because conditioning is what comes the fastest. It also is what leaves your body the fastest. So strength wise, it's what takes the longest to gain, but it also takes the longest to lose. So in my world, we spend more time on creating more force. And once people have reached adequate levels of that force, which typically, for most athletes, it's going to be being able to squat about 2 times their body weight. So if you're a 140-pound athlete, you should be able to back squat 280 pounds. Now, if I can get you to squat that amount of weight fast, that's going to create a very explosive athlete. That's going to create way more speed, and they're going to have more muscle to cushion the joints. So real speed training is still strength training, which a lot of people get that confused. And I can understand why, because you're moving slower. It doesn't seem like a super explosive, fast movement. And you haven't seen it in videos where it looks really, really nice and fun for your kid to come in. Usually it's a group of kids running around with ladders. There's a parachute on a kid's back and they're running as fast as they can. That looks fun to me. Like, I'm sure that would look fun to you as well. Like, yeah, I want to do that stuff. Or it's Olympic weightlifting and they're doing the jerk and they're throwing the weight up over their head. Yeah, those are amazing movements. But if you're doing it with 5 pounds, you're not going to actually become any more explosive. You're just reinforcing what you already have. So in my opinion, and the strength coach world would agree with this, and that's if you look at any uh, textbook that teaches strength and conditioning, it's always building this foundation first, getting the body stable first, because without stability, I'm not going to be able to produce much force anyway, right? So strength training isn't just pushing up as much weight as I can. It's getting my body to stabilize that weight and then push up that weight and then make that weight go up fast. That's basically it in a small conundrum, right? So I start with creating a ton of stability. I get mobility where it needs to be so I can get in the range of motions that I want. So I can do the positions that are called for in proper training. You know, I can get full range into a split squat, which will get me full range into a back squat, which will get me into a full front squat. Once I can do all of those things well, and then I can produce a lot more force in those areas, then I can teach my body one of the 4 main forms of actual speed training. And if we're talking about making the body faster, there's really only 4 ways that you can train speed once the prerequisite work has been done. And it's starting speed, explosive speed, max speed, and reactive speed. Those are the 4 different types. And then how do we know which one that your athlete needs, that your kid needs? I'm just throwing them into the program. We're doing all of them. There's no rhyme or reason to it, but it looks fun and they're going fast, you know, so they think they're getting faster. And that's not actually the case. What they need to find out is which one their sport demands. So if we're talking about soccer specifically, it's usually mainly 3 of the speeds, but which one is the most important for those? Okay, well, that might be the most important speed for that sport, but what if your kid is already good at that? What if your kid already has high reactive speed? Is that really the missing link? Is that really what's going to make them get to the next level? No, it's now my job to assess what speed work they need to do. Maybe they need more starting speed. Maybe they're really fast top end, but it takes them forever to get to that top end. Well, what's good is that top end speed if they can never reach it? You know, well, give me 100 yards and I'll get to that top end. Well, you got to do that in 10 or 20 yards, right? So different types of speed training are awesome. They're super fun to train, but that's not what most athletes should be spending their time doing. And that's not what most athletes are spending their time doing in the off seasons. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it's pretty good. So I think if you were to summarize all of that, you know, like for producing, like when you talk about force, you're talking about strength. And I think what you're picking up on that I've known, that I've seen as being part of like the soccer community for a long time is what typically happens throughout the summer, which is more ID camps, more training camps, more tournaments, more, and perhaps not enough energy allocation to just resting, recovering, and focusing on strength, whatever type of strength that may be under a strength coach's eye, but having that as the goal during the off season. Does that sound appropriate?
100%. Yeah, that's super accurate because that's what's not being done. Every athlete that I encounter that even wants to work with me, they want to know how it's going to interfere with their tournaments, with their camps that they're doing over the summer, with the extra play that they're. Why are you doing all this extra work? And they never have really great answers. It's always just kind of the social norm. It's what all of them have been doing. It's what the culture has kind of created in our country. And if you look at almost any sport, there's off seasons. And here, for some reason, we don't really give an off season. We decide, oh, we have extra time. Now we can focus even more soccer, right? Which is fantastic. But, you know, all development books would agree that it's actually beneficial to do more than one sport up until you're about age 15, 16. And that's so your body is moving in different planes of motion. Your brain is working in different ways. so that you become more an efficient player, right?
Yeah.
So if we're just spending more time playing soccer, we're not gaining all of those skills. And strength training to me is the same thing as doing another sport, but now you're actually focusing on what your body really, really needs, as opposed to hoping that other sport covers some of those bases. So to
Well
me, it's
said.
just narrowing the window. We're really being focused. And if we're talking about getting to an optimal level, then that's when I decide strength training is the number one, because that's going to fill all the gaps that you need to if you have a good coach that's assessed you well. Now, that's not saying that playing other sports, I would take that away. That's still fantastic. I'm just talking about what I believe is optimal to get somebody to that higher level that they're trying to go to.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that, like what an optimal program would look like. But before that, I want to touch on we talked about this, I think it was like a week ago. I forget who we were talking. Oh, we talked about it Sunday about reinforcing faulty motor patterns and talking about, when a player has let's say a 10-month season, 9-10 month season, a youth player has 9-10 month season. And during that season, like it was my example that I brought up, like if they're a righty and they primarily strike the ball with their right foot, they're going to build throughout the 9-10 months, they're going to build imbalances because their right foot leg is going to be doing one thing a lot of the time. Their left leg is going to be doing a different thing a lot of the time. That's going to create imbalance. And even if your player is not right foot, left foot, they use both feet. Still, if they're playing left mid, they're going to be turning certain ways. If they're playing a certain way, they're going to build habits and they're going to therefore build imbalances. And I think that's something important to address during the off season when you can actually address it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, to your point, you're either addressing it or you're reinforcing it. So we're continuing to do these patterns that created the problems in the first place. And then we're trying to fix them while we're literally lighting the fire still. It's pretty hard to put a fire out when someone's still fanning the flames. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. And that's one of the main core reasons there should be an off season, not just to spend your time doing something else, to give your body a break from these very repetitive motions that you're doing. As an athlete, you're usually going to find some easier path to a movement that your body didn't like. So you found that path maybe 5 years ago. How long has it been since you've taken a break from using that compensation? And how much time is it going to take me to correct that? Right? It's going to take longer than a day, I'll tell you that, especially if you're still playing. And if you're still playing, I'm usually just trying to mitigate risk. I'm trying to lower injury risk as much as possible. I'm not even talking about getting them really strong. At that point, it's just let's try and make sure you don't break, because most of them are breaking at different times. And then they want to just throw some training in as like a back-ended insurance policy. And then they wonder why they're not getting better. Well, we're not really training to get stronger right now. We're training to make sure that these patterns aren't going to hurt you. And where's my thank you for you didn't get injured this season, as opposed to I didn't get strong enough and I didn't play better than it. That's understandable, but you put all your time and energy into playing, not into getting stronger, faster, whatever that may be to you.
Excellent. So what does a off-season strength program ideally look like? Like how much time should be allocated? What would they be doing? What's the frequency? What's the focus? What's the methodology? Like what comes to mind for you?
In an ideal world, there would be at least 12 weeks. That changes. Some people only have 8 weeks. Some people give me a month, but some time is better than none. So 12-week cycle would be enough for me to do a complete macro cycle is what I call it. And then I can break that down to 3-week blocks. So, and then I can create what's undulating periodization. Okay. So we're doing accumulation. So we're building up volume. We're getting the body used to handling more, like total amount of weight, total amount of reps, sets. We're trying to get the body getting used to handling more fatigue. And during that time, you're working on all the imbalances, all the weaknesses, setting this really nice foundation. And then you do an intensification block. Now you're narrowing the window a little bit on some of the movements that are more important toward the sport or towards you specifically. You're intensifying those movements. That's a 3-week block. We're getting really strong during that 3 week. Then we fluctuate back accumulation phase 2 for another 3 weeks, but that has to be slightly more than the first block. We need to get your body used to a little more volume so that it knows it needs to keep adapting, right? And then we do an intensification 2 block, and that's when I can peak somebody. So that's when they'll be at their highest level of performance. And then that strength will hold on for as long as we can. Now, if they're going to do 1 to 2 workouts during the season, they're able to maintain that a lot longer. If they're not doing it, it will still hold for a long time because, like I said, strength takes a while to go away, but conditioning is what will need to be entered a little earlier. So in that perfect 3-month block, they're working out at least 4 days. So it's usually, I like to,
A week.
my perfect
4 days a week.
schedule. Yeah, 4 days a week. So
Mhm.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, rest, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, rest. Now, the athletes that I have that are eating really on point and that want to spend the extra time, then it's for 10 days, and then we drop it down 50% of that for a week. And then we go back to 2 days for 10 days. And hopefully we can run that for 2 months. And then we can get that much further. Now, when you start doing something like that, you can't just go right to an hour in the morning and an hour at night. You start by breaking it up, just getting the body used to a couple bouts of exercise. So you do 40 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night. You do that for the first time you do the 2 days, and then you up the volume of that. So their body's getting used to handling that extra amount of workload. Because then when we taper it at the end, their body's still thinking it needs to work out 4 or 8 times in a week with these really high intensities, but we taper it off so that there's no fatigue, and the body's now ready to handle all that strength, all that load, but on the field. So that's where it becomes really, really beautiful, and people can become so much stronger, more powerful than, and most people don't even know what that feels like. And most people haven't even seen that until they see one kid that's like, he is different than everybody. Like, he moves different, he's powerful, like he looks like a pro, and he's 15 years old. Well, he spent the last few years doing what I'm talking about and then maintaining that strength in season. But these are also usually players that come from out of country that are more in line with that philosophy. So in my opinion, the philosophy needs to be, you need to pull back at times and spend 3 to 4 days a week training with adequate recovery, with adequate nutrition, right? And make that as a priority. And if you're someone that needs conditioning, you start that 6 weeks before the games, because it doesn't take that long. And then you just throw that in on the Wednesday and the Saturday. So now my Wednesday, I'm doing 20, 30 minutes of conditioning, really good energy systems based conditioning work, not just let's do a bunch of suicides and run sprints and then do gassers and then shuttles. You're wiped. It was a good conditioning workout. No, there's specific energy systems that each position's going to have and the game has in general. And if I'm working on conditioning and I don't know energy systems, I'm not working on conditioning. I'm really just working on work capacity at that point. How much can I push somebody until they fall over? That's so much different than the actual ways our body utilizes energy. And there's different ways to optimize that. And without a coach, they just aren't going to know that. Even trainers don't know energy systems work unless they're really, really talented. So in my opinion, if you're going to work with athletes, you have to know all these things. You can't lie to them about it, because ultimately you're masking their fitness with fatigue. You made them very fatigued. They think they're really fit, but they're not. All you did was fatigue them. Does that answer their question? Sorry, I might have got a little off topic.
No, this is all good. Yeah, that answers the question. So when it comes to conditioning, it's embedded in the strength programming.
Yeah, it needs to be. Yeah. And that's for those that need it. Some kids, their energy systems work really, really well, and they need to prioritize more just the strength. They can run all day. They don't have problems with efficiency while they're on the field. And some kids, it's just a matter of learning how to breathe right. They run out of breath and they think they're deconditioned. Well, no, everybody should be able to breathe the same. It's more about how's your body's ability to clear carbon dioxide and how well does it utilize oxygen. And there's easy ways to train that. It's literally just breathing techniques. And they could do that while they play. They can do that outside of play. They can do it while they train. And doing that will teach their body how to have better efficiency of oxygen. And then they get rid of that I can't breathe during the games part. Well, if you don't understand that, then you'll think it's a conditioning issue. And then you'll think the kid's not working hard in his conditioning. And that's not necessarily the truth. So I like conditioning and it should be in programming, but it's not everything. And some kids need to spend more of the time, because if you're doing 8 workouts a day or a week, then 2 conditioning workouts extra during that week, you're at 10 workouts in a week. That's considerable amount. And some kids might need to spend more time on just the strength end and not as much on the conditioning, because honestly, the season will condition you pretty fast as well. So
Right.
it's a matter of time allocation, but both can and are done at the same time often. But a lot of times we're not doing any conditioning until 6 weeks out.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, because it is difficult. It's difficult to break away from the norm and what has been embedded into the culture as normal youth athlete behavior. Um, but can you comment on, we talked about this in the past, and it had to do with like players who get injured and then spend time with you, and then they get stronger, and then they go back to the field and they're surprised on how good their touch actually is.
Yeah, I mean, we even had players that I've tried to get them to pull back on their play, right, on how much they're doing. And they just say they can't. Parents say they can't for whatever reason. And then a major injury happens, sidelined for 6 months. I've had players like that that didn't even do strength training come back and are shocked at the level that they're playing at still when they come back from a 6 month hiatus, right? And then I've had the opposite where they have an injury, they go out and then they train with me and then they come back and they're like, wow, I'm playing better than I was before. Because if you've been working on a skill for that long, which a lot of our athletes have, and it's become second nature, the muscle memory is there. That's not just going to go away. That doesn't just go away. And it's one of those, like, this is to simplify it, but if you ever rode in a bike, you get back on a bike and it's really, really simple to ride a bike because you've pedaled 100,000 times in your life, right? If you played soccer since you were 3 or 4 years old, those skills are not going to leave you by taking a 2 or 3 month hiatus. Those skills are going to be enhanced when you add the training to it. You get rid of the mobility issues. You get rid of the compensations you're going to make. You're going to feel more efficient when you play. You're going to utilize less energy. You're going to feel better. You're going to think better because you're not thinking about the different ways your body needs to move, or someone just hits you off the ball and like, how did that happen? No, you're just running through people, playing your own game. And that's when it becomes really beautiful to watch. And like, I really enjoy it because I can tell who on the field has been training and who hasn't. And it's evident most of the times that nobody has.
Well said. I know you work with a few high profile youth soccer players. Can we talk about like what they do during season? Because we talk about off season, but like how do you maintain that explosiveness, that strength, that speed during the season? And what should they be doing then?
So this is the answer you're going to get from strength coaches a lot, but it depends. So there's different situations for different players. So I have one player that they came to me in an off season. They actually spent an off season getting really, really strong. They mastered nutrition. They eat tremendously. And that person, we were able to handle a high load before we went into the season. And then it was a little bit of testing. Okay. What happens if we try and maintain a lot of what we're doing right now with me getting rid of some of the stuff that really damages your muscles? And what is it going to do to your performance day to day? Right. So are they still getting stronger in the gym? Cool. But what's most important is, do you feel sore when you're playing? Do you feel like your performance is still where it should be at when you play? Now, if all of those things are yes, we can continue to train and be smart. And there's days I send them home. They played 3 games over the weekend. He comes in, I look at the warm-up sets and they look slow. They look like it's already heavy. Go home. You don't have it today. And then there's other days he feels great and we train hard and it doesn't hurt his performance when he plays the game. And then I have another situation where we'll have somebody that we did train for some time, and then their bodies, for whatever reason, couldn't handle both loads as well. The season started, the workouts were rough, and it was affecting the play. Well, that becomes maintenance workouts now. Now we're doing 30-minute, maybe an hour workouts. And all of that is to do is just to maintain what we built, right? And to get rid of anything that we see come up. Like sometimes it's like, wow, our ankle mobility was really good 2 weeks ago, but that's clearly diminished. We're going to spend a lot of time today working on your ankle mobility so that we don't have to do that when the off season comes back. And now we can jump right back into what we were doing. So then it's usually just me rotating a few workouts to keep some of the explosiveness they have, keep the mobility they have, keep some of that strength for longer, but the volume is much less. They might do one set of squat that day. And then I'm usually keeping them in what's called functional hypertrophy rep range. So anywhere in like the 6 to 8 rep range, you're touching on strength, but you're also touching on muscle. This muscle is going to go away pretty fast. Once the season happens, you're burning through everything. So you want to maintain that muscle as much as you can. So that functional hypertrophy rep range is really nice because it still touches on strength, but still touches on enough muscular damage to create a response, a hypertrophic response, which means muscle growth. So that's more what the in-season ones look like. So a lot of times we're only, I have one girl that she's only week in season, and she really thinks it helps her. And we don't go crazy. We try and touch on everything, but she was one that just doesn't have the time availability to train a lot in the season. But she got her first pull-up in the season. So that's only training once a week. And she did 3 pull-ups that day. And she's one of our athletes. So that's why I say it depends, but that's why it's so important to build up that like ability to handle the extra volume. Otherwise, yeah, if you start training in season, you're going to have a rough time, especially when you start handling more loads. And I'm working on bringing volume up because you already have so much volume going on, which is total work capacity. For those that are listening and don't understand what that means, it's like how much total that they're doing. It's exercise or on the field play or outside tactical training. All of these things are volume to the body.
Beautiful. You mentioned breathing earlier. And I know we've talked about this, and I know that even you, if I'm not mistaken, you admitted like in the past, like you may have underestimated breathing. And I know that recently, in the last several months, if not more, like you've incorporated breathing into your training. What kind of effects have you seen on that?
So what I've been utilizing is more what's called box breathing. So box breathing is breathing in for 4 seconds, holding the breath for 4 seconds, exhaling for 4 seconds, and then holding that for 4 seconds. So that really teaches the diaphragm how to work. And for those that I've had do that have a really hard time on the exhale and holding for 4 seconds, there's actually a statistic that shows when you fully exhale and you just hold your breath, you shouldn't have an impulse to breathe in for 15 to 20 seconds. So I found a lot of those kids, when they breathe out, they have a hard time just holding 4 seconds. So that tells me their efficiency of breathing is low. And that's literally the same thing that tests it is the same thing that solves the problem. Getting their body to learn how to utilize the oxygen that's in there better, right? So you have to stay in that state of exhale for longer. It's like doing a workout. You do it a few times every day, and you're actually going to improve your body's oxygen utilization. You're actually going to breathe more efficiently. You'll use the air that comes in better. And in terms of training, that matters to recovery tremendously. So I've been utilizing that a little bit in between sets for clients, especially the ones that are really winded. And all of them have seen the benefit of that. All of them like it. And it calms the body down because it really ramps up your nervous system when you did a really, really heavy weight for, let's say, 3 reps or something. Like that was a very maximal load. You just expended everything you had. The faster I can get you to get back to your baseline, the faster we're recovered and can get back into that exercise, the more we can handle throughout the workout. So if you think about that in the same context of playing, the more efficient I'm breathing, the more output I can give, the longer I can sustain that output.
Beautiful. I want to finish up today's conversation on injuries, because I know you've been working with, I mean, throughout your career, you've seen a lot of injuries and you've helped athletes get back to full performance. Um, and I also know with working with you closely, like you're able to see what PTs and doctors are recommending, and then also consult on that, right? What do you see are the most common gaps between or exercises, therapies, or ways to enhance rehab that perhaps the doctors and PTs don't talk about?
One that they're a lot of it's because they're afraid to talk about a lot of things, and they're managed by insurance. So insurance dictates a lot of what they're allowed to do with their patients. So they walk a liability line a lot. So, they're only allowed to say so much. So it's easier for me to come in as a consultant and give advice because I don't have that liability. So to give them, a little bit of a fair break, it kind of sucks. I wanted to get into therapy for a while until I realized that. And I was like, if you're as a physical therapist have a prescription for somebody to heal them, how is that going to get affected by an insurance company that doesn't agree with you, that isn't physical therapists? So that's just to give a little bit of why they do what they do. I understand that, but we have to give more solutions than that, because there's a reason that most people injure one knee and then within 1 to 2 years they injure the opposite knee. And a lot of that is kind of what I'm talking about. For instance, if you're going to we did an assessment on someone at camp recently, which I'm not going to mention their name, but a major injury to the knee. And when I tested their mobility was better in almost every aspect on the injured leg than it was the non-injured leg. So in my opinion, they have a high risk of injuring the non-injured leg, right? And I asked them, are they doing mobility work on both legs? And the answer was no. Well, because they only have so much time with you and they're only allowed to do what they're supposed to do, covered by insurance. Why wouldn't you try and create that same mobility in the other leg? That's just one thing. So one thing is balancing them out. If you're also going to do exercises on one leg, you need to do that on the opposite leg as well to make sure you're keeping the strength balance as much as you can, because it's an ecosystem. And you strengthen one muscle really, really well on one leg and you don't touch it on the other leg, chances are it was already weak on the other leg too. And that might have been what caused the injury to happen in the first place. So we're not actually mitigating injury risk when we do that. Second is they're not actually getting full mobility sometimes and telling you that they are. The knee should be able to bend fully all the way. Your hamstring and your calf should be able to fully cover themselves up, right? And if you can't do that after injuring your knee, that's a problem. And then you can't train full range of motion in a split squat or a squat. In fact, if you bilateral squat, which a lot of therapists have them do, which means two-legged, and we created more mobility in one leg than the other, we're literally going to create more compensations, right? So now we're increasing injury risk when we do that. It's just one of the things that, to me, really, really important to understand when we're talking about rehabbing injury. And then there's ways to really increase the healing time itself. I mean, first and foremost, diet needs to be on point. And when you're injured, your body will utilize more calories than it would utilize if it was not. And then what are we making new tissues with? Protein. So protein needs to be heavy. I also like a lot of collagen support because that really goes to tendons, ligaments, connective tissue, which soft tissue work I like as well. I tell a lot of the athletes that I've consulted with to do it themselves because they can do it way more frequent than going to a massage place once a week or every other week. They can do little soft tissue modalities. If you have a knee injury, just moving your patella, getting your patella mobilized frequently, multiple times throughout the day. Once inflammation is down, that is. And then a lot of them do the straight leg raises. Why would you only do that when you're at the therapist office? And why would you only do that once a day? Your body moves in all these different ways constantly. You need frequency. If the injury is healed and it's not creating pain, you want to increase that frequency to every couple hours, doing those movements, working on mobility every couple hours. And then one of the huge ones that I really, really, really love and I'm an advocate of is red light therapy. So I'm big on using red lights and good red lights, EMR Tech. I have no affiliation with them, but that's my favorite company for red lights. They make a fantastic one. I have a huge one in my bedroom. My wife isn't always super excited about that one. I like to turn it on in the morning. It's bright. That's one. I like to give mineral support to whatever tissues we're talking about. So I like magnesium gel, take minerals in, taking multivitamin in, taking omegas in, making sure vitamin D is high in our body, otherwise supplementing with vitamin D as well. And then my last one, that if mobility, like if you're allowed to move and you're weight bearing, then I really like voodoo flossing, which is wrapping with a band and then going through range of motion and growth hormone, promoting nutrient delivery into the tissues that were injured. And you don't even have to wrap the injury. You could wrap above it, you could wrap below it, because you're constricting some blood flow and then going through repetitions or just range of motion, moving your wrist around, moving your wrist around. It's going to start feeling tighter and tighter and tighter. I take the strap off and my body floods blood into that area, which is what's going to carry all the nutrients that help my tissues heal in the first place. So yeah, that's my little summarized version of injuries and what I think people can do to heal them faster.
Beautiful. Well, we have a laundry list of questions here, Leo. Probably probably 30 more questions to go through. But we'll pause there. We'll break there for today. We'll pick up where we left off in the next episode or whatever. So thanks for sharing. And any other thoughts from you?
Oh, I mean, I like talking about this stuff. So if you guys have questions, don't be afraid to ask. If you have questions about any of the things that I covered, you can ask or reach out in the school app. I usually get back to everybody within 24 hours. So yeah,
Yes, we're gonna post this in a number of different areas. We'll post it in our private community for our parents and for our players. But we'll also, I think we'll post this one in some public areas as well, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, or wherever. So if anyone's listening to this and you have questions, just leave them in the comments below the post. If you like the video, make sure you hit like. And if you want to hear more content about this, Leo and I plan on doing more videos about this. So hit subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Just follow us on the social media stuff, and hopefully we'll be able to provide more value to you guys as days and weeks go by. So cool. Leo, thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon. Everyone else, take care. Thank you. And we'll see you soon.